Hello there, everyone. This is Richard Hughes. He is the chair of the Office for Budget Responsibility. He was on with Laura Koonsberg this morning, and she asked him a few questions about the economy and his forecasts. And then she sat down with Michael Gove, who responded to some of the things Richard Hughes had to say. And obviously, I'm not impressed with Michael Gove. Let's just get into this.
And how would you describe the overall state of the economy?
I think we're seeing clearly the biggest squeeze on living standards we faced in this country on record. But we do expect, as we get past this year and we go into the next 3 or 4 years, that real income starts to recover. But it's still the case that people's real spending power doesn't get back to the level it was before the pandemic, even after 5 years, even by the time we get to the late 2020s.
That's so grim, though. You're saying it might be another 5 or even 6 years until people start feeling better off again.
That's right, based on our latest forecast, and it's partly because UK growth has been held back by a range of supply constraints on some of the key drivers of growth. We've lost around 500,000 people from the labour force. We've seen stagnant investment since 2016.
500,000 people from the labour force and stagnant investment since 2016. What happened then? Let me think. No, just can't think back that far. What happened in 2016? Anyone? Was there any big event? Anyone? No? Dunno. Must be nothing.
And also our productivity has slowed dramatically since the financial crisis, not really recovered.
How much stronger would the economy be if we'd stayed in the EU?
We think that in the long run, it reduces our overall output by around 4% compared to had we remained in the EU.
4%! It's a lot, by the way.
How would you describe 4%, though? Would that be the equivalent of another conflict or a smaller pandemic?
I struggle to put it in any kind of sensible context. I mean, it's a shock to the UK economy of the order of magnitude of the sorts of other shocks that we've seen from the pandemic, from the energy crisis. Those have also had percentage point impacts on the level of output in 5-10 years' time.
Now, I want to ask you about one huge...
So this is just Richard Hughes telling us what he thinks. Remember, he's an expert. He's the chair of the OBR. Of course, the usual crowd will call him a lefty liberal Ramona, more than likely, even though he's none of the above. But bearing in mind what he just said, so since 2016, investment stalled, 500,000 people fewer in the workforce, 4% decline, which he described as similar to the effects of the pandemic. Yes, Brexit in its own right is similar financially to the pandemic. We have to bear that in mind. Let's go now to Michael Gove and see what he has to say about this, shall we? He just heard what Richard Hughes had to say. Let's get his response.
So let's dive straight in with Michael Gove. Welcome to you. You've just heard there the official number crunchers say that it might be 5 or 6 years before people really start to feel better off again. Do you think that's right?
What? Sorry, why is she even asking him that? He should be accepting that as right. That is the chair of the Office for Budget Responsibility. He should be accepting that as correct. That's what responsible politicians would do. They wouldn't form their own opinion based on nonsense. Let's see where Michael Gove goes with this.
We don't know, and I think...
Well, this... That's not the answer, Michael. The answer is... No, the answer is not, we don't know. The answer is, if that's what the man from the OBR says, then that's our best possible guess right now, yes. Not, we don't know. We don't know. We don't plan things based on, we don't know. We plan things based on the best possible forecasts available. Do we not?
To be fair to Richard Hughes, he was very clear that forecasting is a very, very difficult exercise. I'm not going to criticise forecasters. I mean, I wrote a book called Michael Portillo, The Future of the Right, so I'm not very good at forecasting the future. But I do know that, as Richard quite rightly pointed out, we're dealing with the aftershocks of two, significant events. So both the war in Ukraine, first time we've had war on this scale on the continent of Europe since the Second World War, and the COVID pandemic, the biggest global health pandemic since the end of the First World War, they have had a huge effect on our economy and on others' economies.
Brexit not even mentioned. And that face of his there, that I've just paused it on accidentally, sums up the smug nature of what he just said. He's not even mentioned it. He was just informed by the man from the OBR, who he claims to have respect for, that Brexit has had a 4% hit on our economy. And he's just waffled about the pandemic and the war. Because this man was at the forefront of getting us out of the European Union. It's so disingenuous, you wouldn't believe it.
But every country has had that, and this country has also had, as you heard Richard say there, a shock to the economy from the disruption of Brexit, which you backed. And what the impact of that is for people right now, not forecasting into the future, is a very serious squeeze on living standards. Now, by any measure, notwithstanding the fact that you've had to cope with all sorts of different things, by any measure, the Conservatives have been in charge for 13 years. So is it a failure that our viewers this morning are living through the biggest drop in living standards on record?
No, and to be fair, both in your question and in what Richard Hughes said, the context was provided. And this government, Rishi Sunak, has ensured that we've taken action to help people with the cost of living. So the steps that were taken, both in the recent budget, but even before that, have helped people through this difficult time. So we have a windfall tax on oil and gas companies, so that some of the...
You fought against to begin with and then took the policy from the Labour Party.
Not quite, because the Labour approach would have been different from us, but anyway.
Yes, Labour would have gone harder on them than you have.
He took the firm but fair step of making sure that we would ensure that companies which were benefiting actually as a result of the conflict paid their fair share to help people with their energy bills, and people's energy bills are broadly half what they would otherwise have been as a result of what Rishi and Jeremy have done. But those aren't the only steps that we've taken. We've also taken the, for me, difficult and unpalatable decision to increase taxation on other businesses in order to help people through these difficult times as well.
This is utterly pathetic. She asked him, after 13 years, whether the Tories are responsible for any of this. What he gave as an answer was the reactive things they're having to do to make sure people live, to make sure people don't die in their own homes from the cold, to make sure people don't starve. 2 million people using food banks now in the United Kingdom. So she asks him whether he's responsible, and he comes out with a load of reactive waffle and doesn't mention Brexit once. Not once. She should be pushing him on it, but of course she's not. It's Laura Koonsberg.
Richard Hughes has said very plainly to us, we are poorer. We are a poorer country. So if we're having a really honest conversation about this with our audience this morning, do you accept that we are a poorer country than we were going to be?
Well, everyone, I think, accepts, yes, that if we hadn't had the war, the impact that it's had, as we've heard, on fossil fuel prices and on other supplies as well, including food. If we hadn't had the COVID pandemic, then we would have been in a position where our growth rate was significantly higher.
But is that also a reflection on the government? I mean, you say there that the government has spent billions trying to help people. That is true, but they have spent billions on an energy policy, for example, that has helped every single household in the land. Perhaps that support might have been better targeted at the people who really need it. There are 4 million children living in poverty, more than 2 million people using food banks. For the first time, we've had those official figures. Surely, Michael Gove, you must accept that the government has some responsibility for that, and there is an element of failure in allowing people in this country to live in that way.
Well, we can always do better, yes, and one of the things...
What do you mean you can always do better? What an inadequate response. We can always do better. Why don't you ever do better? Why do things have to get so bloody terrible? And by the way, do not be fooled. The energy price guarantee is taking money from the public purse and basically shipping it off to these energy companies. Yes, there's a windfall tax, but we're basically just handing them money from the Treasury. We're saying, here you go, you're going to raise prices. All right, we're going to cap what people have to pay. So the excess we give to the energy companies. We are still paying for it through taxation. That's money that can't be spent on things that we really need because they refuse to be harder on energy companies. And it's pathetic.
Things that we're seeking to do is to make sure both that we can grow the economy overall and that we can help the most vulnerable. So in Jeremy Hunt's budget, we took steps to help people who were not working to work. So we took steps to expand the labour market, as the economists would call it, but basically to help families. So,
oh, Jesus. So what's happening here is, as a result of Brexit and there being 500,000 fewer in the workforce, he wants to replace those people from the workforce who were largely migrants with mothers. Now, this is up to a mother, right? I'm not in the business of telling a woman what she should do. If a woman wants to stay at home and raise her children, she can. If a woman wants to go out and work and accept this childcare offer, she can. But a lot of women do want to be stay-at-home mothers, and there's nothing wrong with that. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I hope we don't get to the stage where mothers are being penalised for not going into the workplace. Because it's absolutely normal for mothers to want to raise their children themselves and not rely on anybody else to do it for them. So no, the idea of sucking economic migrants out of the workforce through Brexit and attempting to replace them with mothers is not something I like. Any women that want to take up the offer, to take up the childcare offer and return to work, go for it. Perfect. But if you are a mother watching this video and you want to stay at home and raise your children, do not feel obliged to do shit. Even if you're poor. Because with the middle and upper classes, they're in the position to stay at home financially to raise their children. If these pieces of shit put pressure on you to return to the workplace in order for you to be able to look after your children, that's not right. It should be equal for everyone. Everyone should have the opportunity, if they want to, every mother, to stay at home and raise their child or children. It used to be the case, of course, that one parent could go to work, usually the father. Mother would stay at home, raise the child or children, and that one income from the dad would be enough for the family to sustain everything. Mortgage payments, could have a nice holiday. The likes of Michael Gove have destroyed us to such an extent that poorer people need 2 incomes now just to make ends meet. Just to be able to have a holiday once a year. And a once a year holiday, I've heard people describing that to me as a luxury. Going abroad once a year, that's a luxury. That's where we are in the United Kingdom. It should be a given that people deserve to get away once a year. That people can put their feet up by the pool or on the beach if they want to. And all that, back in the day, was covered by 1 wage. And now not even 2 will cover it. Because people can't even get on the housing ladder. So before they know it, half their income, maybe more, 2/3 of their income is going to landlords who this government refuse to get a handle on. Some landlords are jacking up their rent 20-30% as we speak. And this lot, the housing minister, on your screen is the housing minister, and he is doing nothing. So this is a true story. My rent is going up by 10%. I accept rent sometimes has to go up. Okay, fine. My landlady visited me towards the end of last year, and she told me she was on a fixed rate mortgage for the next 3 years for this place. So thankfully, the interest rate hikes at the moment aren't yet affecting her. So imagine my surprise when I got an email through the other day saying my rent's going up from $775 a month to $850 a month. I called them. I asked them why. She said, oh, that's what the landlady wants to do. I said, uh-huh. Right. Okay. And what can I do about it? They said nothing. I said, okay, then I'll move. I'll go somewhere else. Where I know someone is not just taking the absolute piss. That person, that landlady, my landlady, owns her own home in North London, worth some £1 million. So that is an example of someone taking the absolute piss out of me. So I'll just move on and someone else can come in. But that's a true story. And I thought that was quite unscrupulous, to be honest, based on what she told me. Can I afford to pay it? Yes. Will I? No. Because you're taking the absolute piss. And that's the sort of people we have ripping off those who can't get on the housing market. Listen, I'm acutely aware people are in a way worse position than me. 20-30% hikes on people who are on universal credit. I'm lucky to not be in that position. I'm lucky to have a job that pays me well. I'm not fixed to this particular place. And hopefully, because I'm a petty bastard, when I move out, and I've been great, I've done everything here. Rarely bother them. Rarely bother the agency at all. So I'm really that petty. When I move out, I hope someone moves in that's a complete dick. Anyway, that's my own personal story. I shouldn't be thrusting that upon you all, but, you know. That's where we are. By the way, this interview goes on for a little while longer, and I believe he still doesn't mention Brexit at all. Everything we are doing is to cover for the mess of Brexit. Shortage in the workforce. Brexit. We're 4% down. Brexit. And this man will sit here and go, well, yes, it was the war in Russia, and it was the COVID pandemic. Yes, and it was nothing to do with anything. Nothing to do with anything the Tory party did, or me. Nothing to do with me. Oh no, couldn't possibly be. Horrible. Horrible man. Oh boy. So I know I've already called on John Redwood's constituency, Peter Bone's constituency, Jonathan Gullis' constituency. Here's another. Michael Gove, Surrey Heath. You have 18,349 majority to overturn. Your best bet is to vote Liberal Democrat. I'm in no doubt about it. Get rid of this. Has he said he's going to run again? He probably will. It's a safe seat, isn't it? Or he thinks. It's in Surrey. Tories control Surrey. They have every seat in Surrey. Doesn't matter. Liberal Democrats. Get in that polling booth. Mark your little cross in your little box next to the Liberal Democrat name, and get rid of Michael Gove. And then he can become the Lord Gove. Of course he can. But whatever. We'll deal with that later down the line. We'll abolish the Lords somewhere. We'll make them go be scarecrows in a field. I'll tell you what, we'll abolish the House of Lords and we'll make them all go pick fruit. Okay? In these fields that, because we're short of them, aren't we? So that's what we'll do. The Lord Gove can go pick blackberries. Okay? From which we can all make jam. How about it? Oh boy. Thanks for watching anyway. Take care, folks.